G'day guys, here is part 2 of the chat with Brian Lake. His time as a Hawk, those 3 flags, the Norm Smith medal, and everything else in between. Enjoy. Now,
Okay.
2012 would have to be one of the greatest sliding door moments for an individual player in recent history. You obviously made the move to the Hawks. How did that come about? I think Marty Pask was actually mentioned something the other month about a lot of midnight meetings with the club. So was it you sending out the Hawks? How did it all sort of come down to it, because it was an extraordinary move?
Probably went back to 2011. After 2010 season with the Bulldogs, we pushed really hard late to finish in the top 4 at that stage. So I hurt my knee. I think it was around 20. I dislocated my kneecap and sliced some cartilage off, so it would blow up. So I'd have to get it drained on Monday, jab it up for the game, and I did that for 5-6 weeks, and all through finals. So by the time I had surgery, the knee wasn't looking too good. So we didn't have that done. Had to have hip resurfacing done on my right hip as well. So the knee was sort of 4-month injury. Hip was 3 months. So I had all those done, and then obviously only been able to do weights and boxing. My shoulder started getting really sore after landing heavily. Tom Williams took me out in one of the finals, and I've landed heavily on my shoulder. So eventually we come back from pre-season, from the off-season into pre-season, and I said my shoulder's still playing up. So we had that scan, and then they go, no, we need to get surgery on that as well. So that was another 12-week injury. So in that year, you have 3 lots of surgery in the off-season. So at that stage, to try to get back to playing football around 3 was just unrealistic. So my performance dropped, and I got dropped down to the VFL. I think it was around 6 at that stage. So what had happened, we were struggling as a team, and it's amazing when your performance drops as well, that sort of players and everyone else sort of turns on you as well. So at that stage, I thought halfway through 2011, I thought my time at the footy club has probably expired. Relationships broken at that stage. So I spoke to Marty halfway through that year, and he goes, it's going to be probably pretty hard to move you on at the end of 2011 after only playing a handful of games and being dropped, and your body's still not quite right. So he said, just have a massive pre-season at the start of 2012 and try to get back to playing some reasonably good football, and we can look at it there. So he knew then at that stage, into 2011, that I wanted to look at another club. So he worked his butt off through that 2012 season to try to find a club. I said, I want to go to a club that's in a premiership window. I don't want to move interstate with the family and the kids for potentially could only be a couple of years. So had to be a Melbourne side. So I think it was grand final week. I went away on a footy trip, and then a holiday with the wife at that stage. So come back grand final week, and he said, we've got a meeting straight after the grand final on a Thursday with Hawthorn. So that was the first time I had known of anything was grand final week.
Wow.
That the only club that he spoke to was Hawthorn.
Okay, so just that was it. Spoke with the Hawks and got the job done.
Yeah,
that's
so
phenomenal, isn't it?
There was a little, probably Hawthorn supporters don't want to listen to it, but there was probably, I went to the grand final, there's probably a little bit of me thinking, well, it'd probably be a good thing if Hawthorn lose this, because it probably even emphasises it more that they feel
there's a need. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. 100%.
So the deal gets done, and I think you went and did a mini pre-season essentially before the Hawks returned from their off-season. Was that something you decided to do yourself just to put your best foot forward, or is that a club decision?
Well, after I had my skin folds tested, I probably needed to get back into training as quickly as possible. Not playing finals, we already had sort of nearly 5 weeks off anyway, or had at that stage. So I said to him, let's just get going straight away and get this going. So it wasn't a 5 days, 6 days a week sort of pre-season. We just started from scratch, and just pretty much just click the reset button on the body and the knee to get that right. So being able to do that at the start of October, I was able to get good 6 weeks of leg strengthening in just to set yourself up for the pre-season when that started, when all the boys would come back.
And I think you ended up missing the first few games, didn't you, with the corked leg? But the team was flying. I think you had 19 wins for the year. charged into the final series. What was it like being part of such, I suppose, a clinical and dominant season? And was it hard for you to adjust to a new system after playing, a certain way at the Dogs for so long?
Yeah, I'll answer the first. 2013, because of the hurt that they had in 2012, even though they probably weren't the outstanding side, they really come home hard in that year with some really good wins. Hawthorn, that they still think it was a final, a grand final they should have won. So 2013, I put the analogy, it was just like me jumping on the back of the peloton. And I was just enjoying the ride. I didn't have to go out in the front. I just jumped on and enjoyed the ride really on that 2013 year because of the hurt and the hunger that they wanted to have some redemption on that grand final loss because it did hurt. So for me that year was one, being able to fit in and understand the new guys, understand how they play, but I probably struggled a little while, and probably Clarko probably struggled with me coming in as well. He was the one that would just love a big spoil like a Josh Gibson, just knock the ball out of the bounds and we can reset. Let's just get another stoppage, set the ground up, and we can go from there. So with me coming in and being able to take those marks, like anything, there's always going to be, you're going to have your good where I do take the marks, but then sometimes there's going to be some soft drops and there could be some look-ins for opposition. So there were some teething issues with that. But also going from the Bulldogs where we weren't really big on team defence, it was very much one-on-one. And even from early days where you stand on a Barry Hall or you stand on a Matthew Lloyd and you start on him from the first minute and you finish on him at the end. So you get your game judged on how many goals he kicks or how many possessions he gets in that game, where that's what I was used to for 12 years of my career. Yeah. So then you go to a club that's just all about system-based. So for me, being the deep pillar, so it didn't matter who it was. So if it was, if it was, I'm just trying to think of a side at that stage. If it was Collingwood, so if it was Jack Anthony that was playing deep, I would stand Jack Anthony. If it was Travis Cloke that was going at the centre half forward, that would be Josh Gibson. So I would just take whoever's deepest. It might have been Scott Pendlebury at that stage. So it was all system-based. It wasn't on a particular person. So for me, it was still hard because then when the ball comes in closer, you're still protecting an area where I'm used to just then locking on and trying to find my opponent as quickly as possible. So that took a little while, and being 30, 31, I think at that stage, it's very hard then to change because you learn your tricks of your trade, and the old saying, it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks. And it was like that. Really hard, especially with a team that's done this for a fair few years. They understood, and they probably got a little bit frustrated with it too. But when it did work, and I understood it, and obviously not, I try to buy in, but it's still the natural reaction is just to lock down in pressure situations. So when I was able to get that, it clicked and it made life a lot easier. And I think, geez, I wish this zone was back in when I first started. It would have made my life a lot easier against a guy like a Matthew Richardson or a Nick Rewalt that was starting the goal square, the work up to the logos on the wing, and then run back. I would have saved myself a lot of hard work. I could have just stayed in the goal square, and I would have been okay.
Was it hard though, swapping your mindset from, like you said, you could have been on a Travis Cloke, and then 5 minutes later you're on a more nimble resting midfielder, for example. Yeah. Was it hard to adapt and change your game style to that, or did you just keep doing what you do best, no matter who it was that was down there?
I was very big on who would kick the ball inside 50. So I'd work on stats and understand midfielder. So for Luke Power, for example, he'd always reel on his left foot. He was never a long kick on his left. So he'd always drop the ball 20, 30 metres to people on the lead. So you'd understand that. So as soon as he gets possession of the ball, I'm already trying to take front position of my opponent. So that wouldn't change if I was on a small or a tall. So I'd study still opposition players that could potentially play on. And I'd probably normally just stay with the same sort of game plan. There's only probably a couple that you would change with that as well. So Tom Hawkins, for example, we would like to play in front as much as possible. But for Tom, I would always have to stay behind him because if you watch him now, he loves players playing in front of him because he's able then just to initiate body contact, protect the ball, drop behind, and mark the ball. So I try to then make him look around for me. I can then initiate body contact. So you learn those little tricks and understand the strengths of some players and change. But it didn't matter who I was on. I sometimes have to be a little bit more careful about trying to go for marks. Or there's a couple of times I even had to stand Eddie Betts. Like I was pretty still quick over the first sort of 10, 15 metres. So I was okay on those type of players because the ball's coming in long and we got enough pressure on the ball carrier. I was okay with even with guys on the lead. I thought my closing speed was one of my assets.
Now that year, you played in a cracking prelim against Geelong, one of the all-time great games with the Hawks winning by 5 points after I think you were 20 points down at three-quarter time. If you can remember, what was Clarko's message at three-quarter time? Because that was an extraordinary turnaround.
No, I could not tell you. I can't even tell you what I said in my my huddle at three-quarter time last week, let alone something 10 years ago. But all I can remember, I was thinking I'm jinxed. I went 20 points down.
Exactly.
I've just come from the Bulldogs. We lost 3 prelims. We're down by 20 points in a prelim for the Hawks that we should win. I'm thinking, Jesus Christ, I'm bad luck here. It must be me. It can't happen again.
And it almost did with 30 seconds left. I think I saw footage. Travis Varco was streaming into an open goal, and Brad Sewell dove across him and did enough to force the miss.
Yeah, and he sliced it. So, even grand final speeches, Clarko wasn't over the top on let's just flick the game plan around and change things. He was very rigid and structured on how he wanted the game. All the playing's already done, so it was just reinforcing those points. Okay, let's be a little bit more aggressive maybe with that ball movement. As soon as we take possession, let's look for the 45 as quickly as possible, get the ball in motion. But it wasn't one of those, like you watch movies as inspirational speech or anything like that. We knew in tough situations we put Silk, Sean Burgoyne in the middle of the ground, wherever we needed him. He was the Mr. Fix-It. And luckily for us, he was able to fix that in that last quarter.
And even for the grand final against Freo, Clarko just still kept the message pretty basic and simple and much of the same as you had the whole year.
The only thing that really changed was probably me at three-quarter time. He asked, and it was Luke Beveridge, that was the backline coach, was instructed me to be the loose man in defence in the last quarter. And I mentioned a couple of times ago, you sure you want me to be the loose man in defence? And that's when Luke Hodge just, with a few little swear words, just said, shut the hell up, Brian, and just listen to what you've been told. Just play loose man defence. I go, well, that's what you've been trying to get out of me for the last 15 weeks is playing into a structure. Now you want me to be a loose man. Well, okay, I'll do that. I'm used to this. All right. I'll play my own game. So, yeah, that's probably the only thing that I can still remember at three-quarter time in the 2013 grand final.
And it was a close game in terms of margin, but it kind of always felt like that you guys had a lot of control of that game. What did it feel like being out there on the ground, especially in those closing moments when you pretty much knew the game was won?
Oh, you compare 14 and 15 compared to 13. There was a lot more enjoyment in those 2 years, the 14 and 15 compared to 13. 13, you still felt nervous. Being new to the system of playing grand finals, you still had that thought of the unknown, really, that they could come back here. You look at the time, you're like, yeah, it's only a couple of goals. You don't know what can happen. And they probably didn't take their opportunities. A little bit of a swirly breeze in that grand final, and they missed some opportunities early. Fremantle, where we were able to kick some goals early and just put that scoreboard pressure on. They jumped us in the third quarter, able to kick a couple of goals, but we knew they weren't a high-scoring side. In those years with Ross Lyon, they weren't a 100-plus point side. They were a very defensive, structured side. So the score that we were able to put on, we thought, well, we should be okay with this. If we can get to 70, 80 points here, we just don't know if they can score those sort of type of goals to beat us. And look at those games. Yeah, Sam Mitchell was fantastic. He played a selfless role in that grand final as well. He knew Ryan Crowley was going to tag him, so they had a dominant ruckman in Sandland. So he went to Sandland's hit zone every single time just to mark up and crowd that as much as possible, because midfield stoppages wasn't our strength. I think we're bottom really of of clearances. But what we're able to do, when that ball cleared, we made sure it cleared at the stoppage, and we'll set up behind the ball. So I might be positioned 30 metres away from that stoppage, knowing the ball's going to get dumped from there. So I'm positioning myself in that position, and then we can set up from there, which worked really well in that game.
Well, whatever you did and however you set up, you obviously played an absolute blinder of a game, playing on Zach Clark, Michael Walters, Chris Main, Pavlich. So you're kind of all over the shop with who you were playing on. But the end result was you walk away the 2013 Norm Smith medalist. Did you have an inkling you were half a chance to get it? And what was it like hearing your name read out and the boys getting around you on field?
Yeah, people ask me, go, did you think you're going to win? I go, I felt confident. I think it was in the first quarter. I was trailing my man. It was out in the wing. I think it might have been Chris Main at that stage. Or no, I think it might have been Pavlich. And I'm about 5-10 metres off him. I'm thinking, oh no, he's going to get possession here. The ball's literally landed. Well, there's only us two there on the wing. The ball's landed. It's gone, bounced over his head into my lap. I'm thinking, wow, I'm on here. This is, you don't get this often. You're like, I'm trailing and the ball's just bounced over his head into my lap. Then I've hit the target. I'm thinking, like anything, in the start of the game, you want to be able to get your hands on the ball early and get a touch just to settle the nerves. To get that one first up, you're like, oh, geez, I'm on here. And
feeling good. Yeah.
It's same, and that's what I was saying with Sam Mitchell. Their ability, the midfielders, to make sure they dump that ball from stoppage. I was then able to position myself off that. Other defenders then working hard to lock down their opponents to give me free air to take those marks. Made my life a lot easier as well. But yeah, in game, especially the last quarter, when the hectic nature of it, it's 100% you don't think about it. But
not caring, yeah.
Your thought does compare that to 14 and 15 when we're 50 odd points up at 3/4 time. You're looking around, you're thinking, oh, who's in for a show here? And I feel like Hodges pushed himself down in defence to be a loose man in defence in the last quarter against Sydney. You're thinking, all right, Hodges trying to get the Norm Smith here. And then 215 was probably a toss of the coin against West Coast. There was a lot of good players in that year. So Cyril was well deserving, but probably my year, probably Jack Gunston. If Jack kicked one more goal, he might have snuck in.
Might have got it.
Yeah.
Now
I'll remind him too. He goes, I've stolen his Norm Smith. I go, mate, one more. If you kick one more, mate, you would have had it. Yeah.
Now, some of the best photos to come from that game, post-game, were the Hawthorn players and all their families out in the ground celebrating with the kids and whatnot. What was it like for you having the kids join you out there for that first grand final win?
Yeah, they loved it. Yeah, there's some good footage. I know there's one of my daughter where she's holding both fists and her eyes are closed and she's that excited. And there's another footage of when I went to the boundary line to get my son. He's running towards me with his arms out, waiting for a hug. You look at that, you're like, now I don't understand why all of a sudden they hate me. All of a sudden, they're 13 years old, 15. They don't want to hug me anymore now. Completely changed. Plus, I don't play AFL football anymore. Maybe that's why. But it is, and that's obviously Hawthorn being a family club. But being able to celebrate it with your family on a day like that, because you just don't know if it's ever going to happen again. You leave a footy club for success to get that in your first year. One, it's relief, but you're like, well, your decision's vindicated then to leave a football club that gave you an opportunity, that sort of went out on a limb there to pick up at pick 71. You felt a bit loyal to stick with them, but unfortunately, perfect world, I would have and played a premiership with them, but unfortunately I had to leave. And the kids, they were quick to jump off the Bulldogs at that stage, and they absolutely loved it. They slept well that night, I must admit.
Now, 2014 was a bit of an up and down year. I suppose early on, I think you only managed to play 8 games due to injury and suspension. But I think most importantly is that you were able to get back and play rounds 21, 22, and 23, which sort of, I suppose, played yourself back into form and locked into the 22. Were you feeling, because you hadn't played as many games during the year, injury aside, were you feeling a bit fresher heading into that final series because of the lack of bashing and crashing?
Yeah, well, I missed the first 3 weeks through suspension from the grand final, so it wasn't ideal. But at that stage, they said, "Do you want to?" I think it was Mad Monday. Do you want to appeal your grand final suspension? And come on, you're not going to be doing that on Mad Monday, are you? So
no, I wouldn't.
I had to take. I took the 3 weeks. I could have tried to appeal it. No, let's just take the 3 weeks. Worry about it later. And yeah, it was a tough year suspension. I had an issue with my knee as well. That was actually fluid that goes from your knee. It was tracking down to my calf, and we didn't know. I was just getting a tight calf, but it was just filling up with fluid, and I tore my calf reasonably badly from that. So, the doctors had never seen that before. So just to get on top of that, I think it was against St Kilda at the MCG. I did that, so I think that might have been right at the end of the year, or middle of the year, sorry, as well. Then the suspension. So yeah, I was feeling good. The plan was at Hawthorn as well, and that's talks was I wasn't going to be playing every game anyway. At my age, that they wanted to try to manage me as much as possible, but it's hard when you're getting into games and other players aren't getting injured. That they're like, well, let's just keep this. You're going okay. So I probably played more games in my first year than that they probably expected. So to have that year was probably good. That I was able to freshen up the body and the mind going into finals, which was needed. So, ideally, you would have loved to have played some more games. And you look at your career, you're like, I didn't get suspended so much. If injuries later on in the career, I was probably lucky early in my career that I had some continuity in footy. My injuries weren't too bad. I probably had more suspensions than injuries, games missed, to be honest with you. But that was probably just me being a bit of a dickhead during my football career.
Now, that final series, the prelim final, for some reason, you guys had a bad habit of playing close prelims. I was actually at this game because my wife's a Hawthorn supporter, and she couldn't watch the last minute. She was at the toilet with her cousin with her eyes closed. But you had a 23-point lead, and Port were just throwing the kitchen sink at you in the last quarter. And even the commentators said that it looked like you were out on your feet. How did it feel out there with Port having just that last-minute surge to try and overcome the margin?
Yeah, and that's how they played all year. They played like that, really aggressive. And the hardest thing, I've got a stepson. He's 22, and he's a mad Port supporter. So it was a very quiet drive into the game as well, and fair to say, it was a very quiet drive home as well, because either way, he would have had to walk home if they had won. It was nerve-wracking, and what you're talking about, the commentators saying we're out in our feet. Well, we definitely were, but we could, with the avalanche that was happening. It was very hard to stop. They had their wingmen just bolting in from the back of the square. Half backs bolting from the back of the square. It was just an avalanche, and it's very hard to stop momentum. You see that in football now. Sides with the 6-6-6 rule, it is very hard to stop, and putting that into a prelim when you got a side that's got nothing to lose compared to a side that's, well, we can't lose this. We shouldn't lose this. You said the nerves kick in. It's probably more recently just with Melbourne and Brisbane game. That probably Brisbane probably put the cue in the rack a little bit too early, and Melbourne's just gone bang bang bang. And it is very hard. And we're very lucky. You look at some moments. I probably could have got done holding the ball in the last sort of 5 seconds after
funny you say that. I've got footage of the last minute that we talk about moments. Yourself and Luke Hodge had some unbelievable moments. So I'll pop this up on the screen here.
Have a look at the one-on-one matchups. Burgoyne pumps it long and wide. Mark Ebert, he doesn't waste any time.
Hodge with the smother.
Hodge. Oh, look at Jonas go in. What a smother from Luke Hodge.
I reckon Jonas is a bit stiffy for holding the ball this time, but we'll take it.
That replay there of Luke Hodge, the captain, he might have just got his team into a grand final with that second effort. Harsh call. He gets it to Mitchell. They might just be able to hold on here, Hawthorn.
He could have hit the 45 there, Sam Mitchell, but like anything, nerves. Just goes long down the line.
Any risks than going near goal, though.
At this stage, I had to let Jay Schultz in the middle of the ground go because they had a loose number in the 450, which was Monfries.
Exactly.
So I had to concede this one.
They have. Schultz can kick it inside.
And then you just see me on this guy.
It'll be a big kick. Here comes Monfries and Lake and Monfries.
Which I can understand why the umpire didn't pay that.
5 seconds, 2 seconds.
And that's it. And that is game.
Made the grand final.
So two clutch moments there from yourself and Hodgie.
Well, Sam's a very good kick. He could have hit that 45 and just retained possession a little bit more, but and also our tall forwards really down the line there. Carlisle taking a mark. If we could put some pressure on there, the game is over. So I didn't want to have that last moment. To be honest, I should have probably taken that mark.
You had the size on Monfries, didn't you?
Yeah, Monfries. Yeah, just tapped it, but I just couldn't get that little bit extra there. And I think that was on the 50 mark, so probably 52. By the time Monfries took that kick, I don't know if he would have made the distance anyway.
Yeah, I reckon he might have been just beyond his range. So I reckon you were pretty safe there. But a great moment for you to hold on and get the win, heading into your second grand final in as many years, which was just crazy. But this time against Buddy Franklin, obviously made the move to the Swans in the off-season. They've got Sam Reid, Kurt Tippett, so they've got some big units down there for you guys to have to take care of. What was your preparation like going into that game, with their type of forward setup, with how big they were?
Yeah.
And was there any made of the Franklin situation, or was it just business as usual? Was it a Sydney mentality rather than a Buddy mentality?
No, it wasn't. Nothing was really spoken about Bud, but the Sydney thing was mentioned. It wasn't done during the year. It wasn't done at the start of grand final week, but it was done in the last meeting, which was on the Friday, and they showed the video guy showed a snippet of about a minute, 2 minutes of highlights from the 2012 grand final. And nothing else was said. They just showed that of the heartache of on players' faces, the celebration from the Sydney Swans players, and then nothing else was said. After that, they just showed that, which put goosebumps on you definitely, and me not even playing in it. It was just moments like that when they did videos like that, or even when Clarko got his guitar out and sang songs. They just had the ability to find the right moment to put those in, and just the video that they did about redemption against Sydney Swans. You probably noticed that in the first sort of 15 minutes in that first quarter, how we were able just to hit them that hard. And probably the moment that sticks in my mind still is Ruffy's hit on Hanbury. It was probably one that sort of typifies that aggression and that hunger to get redemption.
I actually had that exact pretty much question written out next. Like from the outside looking in, it definitely looked like that you guys were playing a much more physical game. And I've got written down rough head crunch Hanbury in the first quarter. You landed on Buddy, made him earn it. He got up sore. And it just, from the outside, it felt like that was a real focus of just cracking in 100 mile an hour to let him know that this is not going to be an easy day for him.
And that's when, me being a coach now, you try to tell to the younger guys about setting the scene, or even your leaders setting the scene, making your first contest really count in the game. And that is the evidence that if you want to show a side or a young person about setting the scene and making the impact with your first touch or your first contest, those highlights. I think there was even Bradley Hill. There was a big tackle out in the wing as well, in front of the Shane Warne stand as well. So just those little moments. And then if you look at opportunities of taken by kicking goals, Langford kicking a couple of goals as well, Luke Bruce, just making your moments count. And the boys definitely did that in the first quarter.
And it continued on because you were 54 points up at three-quarter time. The game's well and truly done. How different was the last quarter and a bit of that game versus 2013? Were you all able just to soak it in a lot more and actually enjoy the moment for what it was?
Yeah. You look at those moments and you look at the first one. There's that relief when that siren went, compared to 2014, where you can look in the crowd when someone's kicked the goal. You can look at all your teammates and understand that the game's over, but you can just enjoy it a little bit more. And the tempo goes out of the game a little bit. You can feel the deflation in the opposition as well. That the ability to defend is just not quite there. So we're able to retain the ball a little bit more and enjoy it. And I know supporters would love games to be always close and the suspense of it, but to be able to enjoy, you enjoy grand finals afterwards. 100% you enjoy it for a couple of weeks and years to go on as well. And get to enjoy it this year, 2013 reunion. But to be able to enjoy a grand final, knowing that you're going to win and being able to enjoy that for 25 or 30 minutes out there was very special. Very
pretty
special.
incredible.
And,
whole different feeling.
Yeah, you probably can't really remember after the grand final because of the craziness and probably a few Carlton drafts, but you remember those highlights during the game.
And now 2015 rolls around. Did you know early on that was going to be your final year, or was that something that didn't really come to mind until later on?
I had an inkling because halfway through the year, I hit up Marty Pass again. I go, do you reckon we could push for maybe another year contract? And he goes, the club's just said, let's just wait to the end of the year and see how it goes. So you sort of knew then. You're like, yeah, I'm struggling here. they might be shipping me on here. So I thought I still had a reasonably good grand final in 2015. So he's like, yeah, maybe you never know. But in saying that, I made sure that I enjoyed the grand final a little bit more in the celebrations on the ground. If it was getting in the Gatorade truck with the kids and hanging out there a little bit more and just soaking it in, because you sort of know, I knew at that stage, I thought this was probably going to be my last game, which is a very good game to finish off on. But I just made sure I just took those moments and enjoyed them a little bit longer than I normally would.
And that final series, I suppose, panned out a little bit different at the start with the loss first up against the Eagles over in Perth. How was that sort of dealt with? Because, you guys hadn't really lost in the finals. You were just going, bang, bang, bang all the way through. And then to have to go back to Perth against Freo for the prelim. Were there any sort of worried feelings or nervousness about heading back to Perth to try and get into the grand final again?
It was addressed pretty quickly because I know it's little things and marginal gains, and the boys did that in 2013 on how can we improve and get better, and they had these marginal gains. So if it's interstate trips, they wanted to win more of those. They wanted goal kicking accuracy, so they understood that we've got to bring the ball into the corridor a little bit more inside 50. So there was all these little improvements that they wanted to make throughout that time, and it was very similar in that year. I forgot your question, actually, to be honest with you.
Was there any nerves having to go back over to Perth to try and get into the grand final?
And what happened with the travel was a few guys got upgraded to business class and taking Snapchats and posting photos of them all on the front of the bus with front of the plane with Virgin. So then we had that loss. So then Clarko's come in the review on the Monday and hit everyone between the eyes. Oh, we're treating this like a holiday. We're all sitting at the front of the plane, enjoying food, taking photos, thinking it's a freaking holiday. This is freaking serious. We're here to be. We should have been over there freaking playing a game of football, not worrying about what seat we're on the plane on. So we're just like, whoa, okay. So fair to say that when we had to go back to Perth, there wasn't too many people sitting at the front of the plane on that trip. Luckily for me, that was my 250th, so I went on a different flight. I went over a little bit earlier with the family, so I was still sitting at the front of the plane, so that was okay. But it was just those little things. It's just like, is it minute? But it was just maybe a little bit of a mindset in that that it wasn't just going to happen again. So obviously we're going down the hard track here, but we had the hard track in 2014 as well, with Clarko being sick, with some guys getting injured as well. That it wasn't ideal 2014, so we were able to do it probably the hard way as well. We'll be outsiders against Fremantle because they had an easy win their prelim.
Yeah,
we're the outsiders against Sydney in the 2014 grand final because they had an easy win over North Melbourne. So we knew we had a good game plan. We understood that what we could achieve here, being a three-time premiership team, a 3 in a row, is something that Hawthorn as a football club hasn't done. There's only been a couple of clubs that have done it, so we could be on something very special here. So let's just not just piss this up on the wind here, and let's get serious and knuckle down. So it wasn't ideal. Then going over to Fremantle again, they probably had some nightmares about the 2013 grand final still, and we were able just to click and click in the gear in that game and get the chocolates.
And it carried on to the grand final as well, because it really did sort of feel like you had a lot of control on that game pretty early on. Did it feel that way to you being out there?
Yeah, it wasn't. Everything wasn't ideal either, because it was the hottest grand final, I think, on record as well, the 2015. So you look at that and you think, well, probably suits the West Coast Eagles. They've just knocked us off in the first final as well. So everything's gearing to West Coast winning this. Everything just looks perfect for them. But then, like we did against Sydney, being able just to set the scene, and it's so crucial being able to kick your goals early in games. I know they kicked the first goal. I think it was Luke Shuey kicking the first goal of the game in 2015. But everything we did was just seemed clinical in that grand final. We were able to put them to sleep really early. We probably went harder with our rotations. We were probably lucky that we were able to get such a good lead. I remember going on the bench and were limited to a certain amount of rotations. So I think we went through, 60 to 70% of our rotations, or 65% of our rotations in the first half, because we just wanted to tip those legs over. So yes, it was probably going to be a little bit harder later in the game with rotations, but we're able to set ourselves up reasonably well in that first half.
Yeah, you had a pretty good buffer.
Crucial.
Did you have a good view of Luke Hodges' goal? That was ridiculous. That was just
I know. I was standing, I think, centre back about 100 odd metres away, and then obviously the crowd. You still remember just the atmosphere of when he does kick it. And then you look up on the big screen just to watch a review, and you have a little giggle to yourself, and your defenders come in and have a chat quickly, and you're just like looking at each other like, really? And that's a feeling you get when you kick those goals. And Will Langford kicked a couple of those against Sydney as well. Kicked a couple from the boundary. So yeah. So you look at that. You're like, yeah, everything's just working for us. Compare that to a Fremantle that you miss your first 3 or 4 shots on goal. It is very deflating as a team when you think, oh, things aren't just quite clicking for us today. But on the flip side, when we're kicking goals from boundaries like that, you're like, yep, we're on here. We're definitely on.
Speaking of things just working, got another bit of footage here. You getting hand on this ball defies logic.
Season. McGovern is the target. He used a lot of strength there, held his position.
If Josh Hill streaming his open goal.
No, I wouldn't. Oh, dear. What a terrible compromise.
Psycho's loving life.
Love that. The coach would love that, playing the game right to the very end.
How did you get yourself into a spot to do that?
I probably went against team rules, and that's there was more footage of Clarko. Clarko's yelling, "Why isn't he pushing up? Why isn't he pushing up?" Because there you meant to get the frontal pressure, and then just hopefully that you put some delay on, and then your offside help. There's some guys coming to the goal square there, but I knew there was nothing around, so I thought, I'm just going to tease him. I'm just going to try to tease him to come at me. Then I'll make it. I'm going to go at him. And like anything, it's just pure luck. I just teased him like anything. There's enough space here. You could just lower it. You don't want to be kicking it too high when you're on the run like that and snapping it. Thought I'd just give him a lot. Hopefully he just kicks this low. And I thought, yep, I can see him about to do the ball drop, just launch. And it was just able to touch
goalkeeper dive.
Yeah. It was. I don't know why they didn't pick me for the Australian rules for the Gaelic footy.
Yeah, move over Dustin Fletcher. You would have stood
I missed my opportunity.
Did you give him a bit of lip service after that one? Let him know that
I couldn't. All I remember was going up and going bang, and because I was that fatigued and buggered, I didn't know what to say. Josh might have said some explicit words at that stage, something like "F you, Brian." I couldn't say much. I was absolutely buggered,
just exhausted,
and a little bit shocked as well.
Soon after that moment, history was made. You won the third flag in a row, which is incredible. Yeah. Did the third one feel any different to the first two? Was there a greater sense of accomplishment, given that no one's really, you don't really see 3 in a row these days?
Yeah, and that was probably the talk through the week, that we're on got the ability here to do something that no one has done at the Hawthorn Footy Club. That we had Jason Dunstall talking about their two peats as well, that they went back to back, but to be able to go back to back to back at the Hawthorn Footy Club with the success that they've had, that they haven't been able to do that before, puts us in rare air and up against sides that have done it previously as well, and most recently Brisbane Lions as well. So, yeah, you look at, I know you're a Richmond supporter, they didn't quite able to get three. Oh, they got three, but not in a row. Three in a row is not easy. And you look at and you look at Geelong as well, that they weren't able to do that. 07, 09, and in 2011. That what Hawthorn learned from 2000 and their 8 grand final, that they probably took some things for granted in 2009 and missed the final. So for them to experience that and then not have any success until 2013, they were very conscious, and was probably very hard on guys in 2014, knowing that they just didn't want to have that that grand final hangover.
Now, the one thing that always amused me during this golden period of football for Hawthorn was that Richmond would often knock you off, and we weren't playing that well. We weren't that great, but for some very strange reason, we just seemed to match up reasonably well against you. I don't know if it was the Dimmer versus Clarko factor. Don't know what it was, but was that ever spoken about, or was there ever a reason why that would happen? Like a lower team like we were would it just never made sense.
No, it's just sometimes just certain game plans that just doesn't suit how you like to play as well. I think at that stage, Richmond would hold on to the ball a little bit more and try to pinpoint and go through our zone. So we weren't able to defend that too well compared to other sides. So we wasn't too sure, but we also had the Kennett's curse as well at my time at Hawthorn. So fair to say, a lot of thought went into those issues as well. So, it's amazing when you have those, and that's what happened in that period of time. I'm like, well, why do they keep beating us? What's going on? Is because of the pressure of losing 5 or 6 in a row against a side like that. You go like it's just a normal reaction. Everyone wants to go harder at the ball. We've got to win this. We've got to win this contest. So what was happening? 3 or 4 guys were going into the stoppage and then trying to win that contested ball. But all Geelong did was have one person go on the ball carrier, and then had an outer ring circle of other players. So they'd win the ball, get their feet out where 3 or 4 of us would go at the ball, and they had out numbers outside the contest. So we're like, okay, we're just going to get better balance here around stoppage. Let's just not go crazy at the ball carrier. Probably worked in our favour then with how we played, that we would always lose stoppage, but we'd always be better set up around the ground. But against Geelong, everyone was just like, no, we'll lose our structure. We're just going to go at this ball and we're just going to see if we can go harder at them, harder than them at the ball. But that wasn't working for us at that stage. So we just tinkered a few little things, and then Sean Burgoyne turns on for 1 quarter and we're able to break the Kennett curse.
He's unbelievable, Sean Burgoyne. Yeah. And there you go, Hawk fans. That is part 2 with Brian Lake completed. Some amazing stories from a triple premiership player, Norm Smith medalist, some great insights. I really hope you enjoyed. Make sure you like and subscribe for more.